Well, and now still in Jerusalem, I want to talk about archaeology. Yuda Glick mentioned it, the past and the future. Dr. Barak Monnickendam-Givon. How do you say it? Excavation.
Monnickendam-Givon.
Sorry?
Monnickendam-Givon.
Monnickendam-Givon. Excavation co-director in the Israel Antiquities Authority. Well, I want to talk to you about archaeology and about Jerusalem, but first of all, let's talk a little bit about you. How long have you been working on archaeological sites in Israel?
Well, I'm now an archaeologist for about 15 years, since I was an undergrad at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and where I actually did all my 3 degrees there. So yes, and I mainly worked on the coastal northern plain of Israel, but for the last year, I'm a member of the Jerusalem region at the Israel Antiquities Authority, and where I'm co-directing the excavation at the Western Wall Plaza, which of course it's in the heart of Jerusalem, in a place, sacred for millions of women and men around the globe.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. I have to ask you a question. I'm sure you've worked with youth, with children, with teenagers along the years, because all these sites always take volunteers from all over Israel. Do the children understand the value of archaeology here in Israel? I mean, practically every stone that you turn has some history under it. Does it intrigue the youth? Is it interesting? Do they value that?
Yes, I mean, at least the youth we've been working have a lot of interest in archaeology and in the past of Israel as a whole. And yeah, I mean, we excavate many diverse time periods. And of course, we always teach and learn, and we always get questioned, and it raises a lot of interest from those children.
Because it's amazing. It's an opportunity I imagine not everyone has, because eventually here in all eras we have so many interesting things that we see. Is there a particular region or particular era that interests you more than another? You mentioned the coastal area, perhaps a specific era?
Specifically, I'm more interested in what we call the Hellenistic period, which is the 3rd, 2nd, 1st century BC. Were in Judea, the area of Jerusalem and central mountain region, the Hasmoneans ruled. And I myself, on my PhD, I mean, I worked on what's called the Phoenicians, which are the successors of the Canaanites who lived on the coastal plain of Israel.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the underground system that was uncovered, which was the reason in the first place that I wanted to talk to you. And let's see, we have a couple of pictures. Let's see, and as we show them, perhaps you can explain what are we seeing here?
Okay, what we're seeing here are the wall that we're seeing to the left is a monumental part of a monumental building built in the Byzantine period, roughly about 1400 years ago. And it was paved with a plain mosaic floor. And as we dismantled and took the mosaic floor in order to reveal the earlier phases of Jerusalem, in its ancient past, we encountered in this, subterranean or dune system.
Okay, so just so I understand, this whole street, it wasn't underground at the time, is that correct?
No. The area that we're seeing it was part of a building, a very large building, and it was paved with a mosaic floor.
So, and you deliberately dismantled the mosaic in order to see what's beneath in a previous era. Okay, go on.
Exactly. And then we encounter in this first what we found was the bedrock. And it was a little bit disappointing because as an archaeologist, most of the buildings, especially in Jerusalem, are stone built and are built over the street level. And if when usually we hit the bedrock, it's mean that we're lacking any more evidence. I mean, any more lives or building or structures
Hmm.
there. But then we saw a little shaft in the bedrock, and then we took a consolium, and then we tried to take another section
Hmm.
of the mosaic, and then we found this really hewn section of the system.
So it was just basically trial and error. You just started in
Yes.
a certain place and then in
Yeah, I mean,
another
in
place.
archaeology, you never know what you're going to find.
So
Find. I
that there
mean,
was no scanning or anything involved beforehand.
well, there are scanning. There are methods called Lyard and etc. But this specifically system was filled with giant rocks,
Uh-huh.
and the radar
Yeah.
cannot tell the
Hmm.
bedrock from one of those regular rocks. So,
Yeah.
and we're working manually, very carefully, in order to uncover
Hmm.
all the remains there. Um, so yes, and of
Hmm.
course, we're sifting most of the material that we're finding in order to see the potsherds, the coins, and all the other small finds that we're finding throughout the excavation.
Hmm. So now we were seeing now something that
Yeah.
is a little deeper and kind of an
Yes.
entrance. So
Yes.
I assume that when you saw that one, you already knew before digging it out that you hit a jackpot, right?
Yes, yeah, it's going to be very special. Now,
Mhm.
during that time, we're talking about 2,000 years ago, what us archaeologists call the early Roman period, or
Mhm.
the time of the time of the Second Temple, just on the eve of the destruction by the Roman
Mhm.
legions in the year 70 CE. What we saw was carved staircases, three steps, and then we cleared all the dirt from the opening, and we went down to the next room that we can see in this bluish light
Mhm.
on the right end of the image. And then in there we started again clearing everything, and then we encountered and we found another staircase leading to a third room, and
Mhm.
this was a really big surprise, because we saw the complexity, and we saw the investment during that time in this system.
So, okay. So first of all, we know you know already that it's from the era of the Second Temple, right? Like,
Yes,
like we talked with Yuda Glick. This is the original place where the original pilgrims went to Temple Mount or to whatever the business was in Jerusalem, right?
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, the system itself is located roughly 120 feet from Temple Mount itself, and about 40 something feet from what's called the Great Bridge. You need to understand, in order to understand the geography and topography of ancient Jerusalem. So most of the people live in what's called the upper city,
Mhm.
which is right where now the Jewish quarter is residence. And then
Mhm.
in order to get to what's today is the Western Wall Plaza and then back to the Temple Mount, you need to go down a valley and
Mhm.
then go up Temple Mount, which is,
Mhm.
of course, is a mountain.
So
And
basically, there are
then,
two hills. One is Temple
yes,
Mount, and the other is the city, and there used to be a valley between those.
a valley, and then there
Mhm.
was a bridge that used to bridge the gap
Mhm.
between those two hills,
Mhm.
and we're excavating, as I said, just 40 something feet from this bridge.
Wow. So, but just to be clear on that, this is outside the perimeters of Temple Mount,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what's called today the Western Wall Plaza. As I
Hmm.
said, 120 feet outside the Temenos, the sacred
Hmm.
compound that held the Second Temple.
Okay. And have you find? Do you already know what was it used for, or have you found any indications for any event related to the era of Jesus Christ, or to events related to Jesus Christ himself?
Not yet. What we did find are potsherds and other vessels, which I
Hmm.
will talk about in a few seconds. And they're all dated to the 50s and 60s of the first century C. So we're
Mm-hmm.
talking, roughly about 20 years after Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And but what we found there a lot. I mean, hundreds of clay-made oil lamps,
Mm-hmm.
which of course it's very dark inside, and there is no light. There's no electricity in antiquity, so the only light source in those small rock-cut system can come from oil lamps.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also found, which is very special, and we're finding it mainly in association to the Jewish priest of the Second Temple,
Mm-hmm.
are what we call stone vessels. There are small vessels, small cups,
Mm-hmm.
and basins who are made out of the local chalks, the local limestone
Mm-hmm.
of Jerusalem, of Judea,
Mm-hmm.
and and we know that they were used as part of the worships and ceremonies
Mm-hmm.
in the temple because in the ancient purity laws of Judaism, from the Bible to the
Mm-hmm.
Mishnah,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to the rabbinical scripts of the first century CE, stone-made vessels cannot become impure
Mm-hmm.
in any case. They're always
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Unlike clay or other
unlike clay,
materials, right?
yeah, when it's becoming impure, you need to break
Mm-hmm.
them. But stone
Right.
vessels are always kept pure, and all the work in the temple has to be in pure status.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we see in Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
In Judea, many many stone vessels, and these are the same stone vessels that we found inside this system. So
Mm-hmm.
we do know that, and we also found cooking vessels, meaning people actually heated their food and ate their meals there.
Mm-hmm.
So we are speaking about, daily life use, just,
Uh-huh.
few yards from the Temple Mount itself.
Mm-hmm. And is your work there already done, or are there
No,
any
no, no,
other
no. It's
directions?
still work in progress.
Uh-huh.
We had a little bit of delay due to the COVID-19 crisis, of course,
Of course.
and but we're now continuing. The third room in the system is not entirely exposed. We're now gonna keep on working on it. We don't know what we're gonna find inside it. Yeah, it's still full of dirt, ancient dirt from
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years ago, from the eve of the destruction.
Oh.
And yeah, we're gonna keep on the Israel Antiquities Authorities, alongside the Western World Heritage Foundation, are still working there. And who knows what they're going to find, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
expand all this area in order really to reveal Jerusalem and its glory in antiquity.
Mm-hmm. But is work, how fast can you progress? Do you work like bucket by bucket?
Yes,
Really?
we
Okay.
work manually
Mm-hmm.
with pickaxes and something that's called in Israel turia. It doesn't have really an equivalent. It's like a shovel.
Yeah,
It's
nice to show. Yeah.
yeah, it's a Middle Eastern
Mhm.
shovel, and we're
A
working with
right-angled shovel, I'd
yeah,
say, right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, yes, an angled shovel.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're working very manually, very carefully. We don't want to harm the ancient remains, and we're collecting everything, and then we're sifting everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
with the sifting process and cataloging everything, it's a long process, and it's still ongoing work.
okay. So for my next question, when will it be open to the public? When will we be able to come and see it?
Well, first we need the COVID-19
Yeah, of
crisis
course. Uh-huh.
and hopefully as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then small portion of the excavation can be seen in what's called the behind the scene tour of the Western Wall Heritage Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I mean, we're working there in order, to develop the site for tourism. So it will take few months to years until we'll end,
Mm-hmm.
but then it will be open to the public.
Oh, well, it's good
Yes,
news. I was afraid you'll say it will take 5 to 10 years until you finish everything, and then.
hopefully faster.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now I have a more general question. we hear all the time allegations about the Jewish people not having any historical connection to the land of Israel. From your hands-on experience, you said 15 years, I imagine it's even more. Is there any scientific basis to these allegations?
Well, I spent most of my life in the academy, and for us, we hardly ever encounter those claims or allegation. It's not part of the mainstream academic discussion. You can always dispute, what's the connection between an what we call Iron Age or early Roman Jew, and then all kind of the different processes, Judaism and all other religion, came through in the last 2,000 years, but it's not part of my daily life discussion at all.
Mm-hmm. So in the academy, no one undermines the relations between the Jewish people and the land of Israel and Jerusalem, for example.
No, I mean this area is even called Judea, so
Mm-hmm.
and at least in the circles I'm going and in the conferences I'm attending. So no, I mean there is
Mm-hmm.
no questions about those things.
Okay, Dr. Barak Monnickendam-Givon from the Israeli Antiques Authority. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.